I know what financial panic feels like. I know what it feels like to wake up before dawn, stare into the dark, and feel as if the arithmetic of your life has turned against you. You open your eyes, and the first thing you remember is not the day ahead. It is the number, the balance, the bill, the payment due, the credit card that is already too full. The account you do not want to look at because the truth inside it feels heavier than the room. A lot of people carry that weight silently. They go to work, they answer messages, they smile at the grocery store, they act normal in public, but inside, they are doing the math over and over. How many days until the next check? Which bill can be delayed? Whether the card will clear? Whether the collector will call again? Whether one more inconvenience will turn strain into collapse? That is not just a money problem. That is a psychological siege. And because it is a siege, most people try to escape it emotionally before they ever solve it mathematically. That is the mistake. I want to begin there because a person who is broke is usually told two lies at the same time. The first lie is that being broke means being stupid. The second lie is that the way out must be dramatic. Both are false. Being broke is often not a moral failure. It is often the result of bad structure, weak habits, predatory systems, short-term thinking, and a long series of ordinary decisions made under pressure without a durable plan. And the escape does not usually come from one lucky break. It comes from changing the structure. That sounds less exciting than a miracle. It also works. I have spent my life around businesses, capital, leverage, incentives, and human behavior. And if you stay around those things long enough, you learn that financial collapse rarely begins with one large act of stupidity. It usually begins with drift. A person spends more than they think they do. They borrow because everyone around them borrows. They say yes to small conveniences, small monthly payments, small indulgences, small symbols of status. They assume income will solve what only structure can solve. They keep moving, but they are not building. Then one day the machine jams, maybe rates go up, maybe a job changes, maybe inflation eats the margin, maybe the emergency you could once absorb becomes the one you cannot, and suddenly the whole life that looked stable from the outside reveals itself as a fragile arrangement held together by timing. That is why I do not want to start with shame. Shame is useless in finance. It consumes energy that should be used for correction. A person who is drowning does not need a lecture about dignity. He needs a rope, a direction, and a willingness to swim. The same is true with money. If your financial life is broken, the first useful step is not self-hatred. It is clarity, brutal, exact, unemotional clarity. You must stop treating your financial reality like a ghost story. Most people in deep trouble practice avoidance. They do not open the statements. They do not total the debt. They do not look at the interest rates. They do not tell the truth to their spouse. They do not tell the truth to themselves. They live in a fog because fog feels softer than arithmetic. It is not. Fog is more dangerous than arithmetic because it keeps you unarmed. I would sit down tonight with a blank page and write every number, every card, every loan, every overdue notice, every minimum payment, every monthly obligation, every dollar owed, not from memory, not from hope, from records. You do this for one reason. What is named can be fought. What is avoided grows teeth in the dark. People are often stunned by what happens next. The number may be ugly, the number may be humiliating, the number may even be worse than you feared. But once it is visible, it stops being a monster and becomes a target that matters. Because the unknown is emotionally heavier than the known. A hidden debt has unlimited power in your imagination. A written debt has a shape, and anything with a shape can be attacked. There is another truth I want you to understand. Zero is not failure. Negative territory is where the real suffocation lives. When you are buried under high interest debt, your money is not merely standing still, it is running backward. You are climbing a hill while the ground slides beneath your feet. That is why I tell people that getting back to zero is not an embarrassment. It is a liberation point. Zero means the compounding machine has stopped working against you. Zero means the emergency no longer has interest attached to it. Zero means each new dollar finally belongs to the future instead of to old mistakes. A great many people fear zero because they imagine zero means having nothing. What they do not understand is that zero can be the cleanest floor you have ever stood on if you spent years below it. The problem is that most people never reach zero because they refuse the discipline required to stop the bleeding. They want progress without sacrifice. That is not, if the roof is on fire, you do not debate interior decoration, you extinguish the fire. Debt repair works the same way. The first goal is not investing. The first goal is not chasing a high-return miracle. The first goal is not finding the hottest trade or the newest coin or the friend with the secret opportunity. The first goal is to stop the outflow. If you are carrying credit card debt at brutal rates, you are not in an investment phase. You are in a triage phase. That distinction matters because modern culture has trained people to treat offense as more intelligent than defense. It is not. Defense becomes intelligent when the house is already burning. If I had a person sitting across the table from me who was broke, stressed, and drowning in consumer debt, I would not begin by talking about stock screens. I would begin by talking about the ego tax. The ego tax is the premium people pay to look less poor than they really are. It is everywhere. The phone that costs too much. The car with the monthly payment that consumes the future. The food delivery habit dressed up as convenience. The subscriptions that individually look harmless and collectively become absurd. The weekend's finance because the person is terrified of looking left behind. The wardrobe built for impression, the apartment stretched for identity. The little luxuries that are not really little once you add them up across 12 months. Most people are not broke because of one giant act. They are broke because of 1,000 ego-friendly leaks. That is why repair feels boring. You must put your lifestyle in quarantine, cancel the subscriptions you do not need. Stop eating your budget cook. Simplify, downgrade, remove every expense that was serving appearance instead of function. The world will resist this because the world is built on people spending money they should have kept. Your friends may laugh, your coworkers may say you are being too extreme. Someone will tell you that you deserve little pleasures. Maybe you do, but if your current structure is mathematically broken, then unearned pleasure is often just delayed pain with better packaging. That is the hard truth. There are seasons in life where normal living is appropriate. There are other seasons where financial emergency deserves emergency behavior. People do not like hearing that because it sounds harsh. It is still true. A person buried in consumer debt should not be trying to protect social comfort. He should be trying to protect the next decade of his life. One of the most common anchors dragging households downward is the financed vehicle. I have watched people earning modest incomes bind themselves to expensive cars as if transportation were supposed to function as a personal billboard. It is madness. A financed car is often not transportation. It is compressed future freedom converted into a status object. If you are broke, the goal is not to impress a parking lot. The goal is to stop bleeding. That may mean selling the payment. It may mean downgrading aggressively. It may mean driving something unfashionable for a while. So be it. Embarrassment is cheaper than insolvency. I would rather look poorer for 2 years and become stronger for 20 than look polished for 2 years and spend the next 10 repairing the damage. That is an easy trade for me. But once the lifestyle surgery begins, something difficult happens. You do not just fight numbers, you fight identity. A lot of spending is emotional camouflage. People buy because they are tired. They buy because they feel deprived. They buy because spending is the shortest distance between discomfort and temporary relief. You must break that reflex. The problem is not that relief feels good. The problem is that borrowed relief becomes delayed punishment. You do not build a better life by numbing yourself with recurring small indulgences that keep the structure weak. You build a better life by becoming willing to feel a little discomfort in exchange for future leverage. That is maturity. Now let us imagine you did the ugly work. You wrote down the debts. You attacked the highest rates. You cut the waste. You stripped the ego tax from your life. And after months or years of humiliating, disciplined, repetitive effort, you finally reach zero. This is where a lot of people make another mistake. They think the hard part is over. It is not. The first war is debt removal. The second war is identity reconstruction. The person who reaches zero but keeps the same psychology soon finds a way to go backward again. That is why zero is not the finish line. It is the launch point. Now the real question begins, what is your actual capital? Most people say money. That answer is too narrow. Money is one form of capital when you have none. You are forced to confront the other forms: time, attention, discipline, reputation, skill, energy, the ability to solve a problem, the ability to learn faster than the person next to you. Those are not decorative assets. Those are survival assets. And if your bank account is near zero, they matter more than any opinion you have about the market. A broke person still receives 24 hours a day. That fact sounds simple until you think about what most people do with those hours. They work, they come home exhausted, they seek escape, they scroll, they complain, they consume other people's entertainment, they borrow a feeling of progress from sports, games, gossip, outrage, and distraction. Then they say they have no chance. What they often mean is that they had no structure. This is where I become very direct. If you are broke, your evening hours are not casual. They are seed capital. You may not have financial capital. You still have blocks of time that can be traded, either for future leverage or for present sedation. That is a serious choice. The world is full of people who surrender their highest potential hours to companies that monetize distraction. Then they say opportunity never came. Opportunity was there. It was just uncomfortable and unentertaining. I would defend a block of evening time the way an intelligent investor defends scarce capital. Shut off the unnecessary noise. Put the phone away. Stop giving your best remaining attention to platforms that do not know your name and do not care whether you escape. Protect 4 hours if you can. Protect 2 if you must. But protect something. That block becomes your rebuild fund. Now comes the most important transition. You must stop thinking only like a laborer and start thinking like a specialist. The labor market is not sentimental. It does not pay according to effort alone. It pays according to usefulness, scarcity, reliability, and replaceability. If a person can be swapped out easily, the market will not reward him richly for needing money. Need is not a bargaining chip. Usefulness is. That is why working harder in the wrong structure often changes very little. You can multiply a low value hour many times and still remain in the neighborhood of struggle. If you want a meaningful change in income, you need either leverage or greater value or both. This is where skills matter, not vague ambitions. Specific skills, a narrow capability that solves a real problem for somebody with money. It might be software, it might be advertising, it might be editing, it might be bookkeeping, it might be technical sales, it might be electrical diagnostics, it might be plumbing, it might be data work, it might be writing, it might be a disciplined trade that the world cannot easily replace. I do not care which one nearly as much as I care that it satisfies one test. Does it make you harder to replace and easier to pay? That is the right question. The good news is that we are living in an era where knowledge is cheaper to access than at any other point in history. The bad news is that access is wasted on people who treat information like entertainment instead of a tool. A broke person does not need more passive content. A broke person needs targeted study. Choose one skill, not 10. One, then commit a season of evenings to it with real seriousness. Do not dabble. Do not drift. Do not keep changing paths every 6 days because the internet made another opportunity sound easier. That is the behavior of a consumer. Be a builder. A builder understands that boring repetition creates value. You may study for months before a dollar comes in. That is fine. Internal compounding is still compounding. While other people are decaying into distraction, you are building an asset inside your own mind. And once that asset becomes marketable, the physics of your income change. That change is what most people are really after, though they often try to reach it through fantasy. A laborer sells hours. A specialist sells outcomes. A laborer is measured by time spent. A specialist is measured by problems removed. That is a different negotiating position. And the earlier you learn it, the less likely you are to spend life trapped in the arithmetic of low-value labor. Now let us talk about the first $1,000 earned from that rebuilt capability. I think this is one of the most important moments in a person's financial life. The media loves to glorify the first million. I have always thought the first independently generated $1,000 can matter more psychologically. Why? Because it proves the machine can work. It proves that you can take skill, time, attention, and focused effort and convert them into capital without waiting for permission from a salary structure that may never save you. That is a profound shift. The first 1,000 built from your own upgraded value is different from a paycheck. It tells you that you are no longer limited to the old relationship with money. But that moment carries danger. The system sets a trap right there. The trap is reward spending. You feel proud. You feel deprived from the long season of discipline. You want proof that the hard work meant something, so you reward yourself too early: a phone, a trip, a nicer apartment, a car upgrade, 100 little ways of announcing to yourself that the old pain is over. This is how people leak away the first real turning point of their lives. Lifestyle creep is one of the most efficient destroyers of financial progress ever invented. It does not look like destruction at first. It looks like relief. That is why it is so seductive. When the first 1,000 arrives, it should not immediately become consumption. It should become reinforcement. Better tools, more training, a stronger buffer, a small reserve, debt reduction, if any remains. Reinvestment into the capability that produced it. The snowball is still fragile at that stage. Fragile things do not survive celebration very well. They survive protection. I would continue living lean long after the first signs of progress appear. That is how base capital gets built. A person who reaches a small win and immediately expands lifestyle is still trapped in the old psychology. A person who reaches a small win and strengthens the base is building a new one. That distinction becomes enormous over 5 years. Now, let me tell you something that many people miss about those who truly rebuild from nothing. Their greatest asset is not the money they eventually accumulate. It is that they know how the structure was built. That knowledge matters. A man who inherited money may enjoy it, but if he never understood production, value, restraint, and leverage, he may remain weaker than he appears. A person who went to zero, rebuilt skill, rebuilt discipline, rebuilt margin, rebuilt ownership, and rebuilt confidence has something more durable. He understands the machine. If the world knocks him down again, he is not destroyed in the same way because he knows what creates recovery. He can start again from structure rather than from panic. That is real power. I want to stress something else here. This rebuild is not only about income, it is about temperament. A person who escapes financial chaos without learning patience often recreates the chaos with better furniture. A person who earns more without upgrading judgment usually just scales his mistakes. That is why character matters in money, even if no one likes that phrasing. Character is what decides whether new capital gets converted into lasting strength or temporary display. The market, the economy, and society will keep tempting you into display. Display is always for sale. Strangers will keep renting you the illusion of success. A car payment can do that. A luxury phone can do that. A nice dinner habit can do that. A costly apartment can do that. Social media can do that daily. But display is not freedom. Freedom is room. Room to think. Room to absorb shocks. Room to say no. Room to wait. Room to buy when others are forced to sell. Room to make one mistake without becoming a casualty. That is what real money should buy. And you do not get there by winning 1 month. You get there by converting your financial life from reactive to structured. That means the plan must keep working even when you are tired. Automation matters. Rules matter. A capped lifestyle matters. Defined savings. Transfers matter. Dedicated skill. Building time matters. The separation between operating cash, emergency reserves, and growth capital matters. People like inspiration because it feels powerful. I like systems because they keep functioning after inspiration leaves the room. If I were rebuilding from financial ashes, the sequence would look something like this. First, name every debt and stop hiding. Cut the ego tax ruthlessly. Third, attack the highest interest liabilities without sentimental excuses. Fourth, reach zero and recognize it as a clean line, not a humiliation. Fifth, protect evening hours as the seed capital of the rebuild. Sixth, master one marketable skill that raises your economic value. Seventh, use the first new money to reinforce the machine instead of decorate the self. Eighth, keep fixed costs lower than your pride would prefer. Ninth, build reserves so one emergency does not send you backward. 10th, convert labor into ownership as quickly and steadily as possible. Broad productive assets can help with that. Low cost index funds can help with that. A small business can help with that. A side income stream can help with that. The exact vehicle matters less than the principle. The principle is that your life must gradually depend less on the next hour worked and more on assets, skills, and systems that keep producing beyond the immediate moment. That is how you transition from survival to strength. It does not happen in one weekend. It happens quietly. Then suddenly the numbers begin behaving differently. Debt is gone. Cash reserves exist. The next emergency does not feel fatal. Your income options broaden because your skills are worth more. Your money begins staying instead of evaporating. You buy fewer status signals and more future. That is when life starts feeling less like a trap. Most people do not need a miracle. They need a season of disciplined truth. They need the courage to stop performing wealth and start building it. They need the humility to accept how severe the problem is and the confidence to believe that severe problems can still be solved step by step. That is what I would tell the person who feels buried right now. Do not worship your own collapse. Do not romanticize your struggle. Do not tell yourself stories about how the system is unfair and then use unfairness as permission to remain passive. Maybe the system is unfair. That observation does not make a payment. Maybe your starting point was worse than someone else's. That observation does not build skill. Maybe you made embarrassing mistakes. So what? Embarrassment is survivable. Drift is more dangerous. The future does not care how ashamed you feel. It responds to structure, repetition, learning, restraint, and time. That is good news because those things are available before wealth is. If you are at the bottom, then start with the work that bottoms can still do. Tell the truth, cut the waste, protect your hours, upgrade your usefulness, build the first 1,000 the hard way, guard it from lifestyle vanity. Keep going until the arithmetic changes. Then keep going longer than feels necessary, because the people who truly escape are usually the ones who stayed disciplined after things started getting a little easier. That is where the real separation happens. Anyone can be motivated in terror. The stronger person is disciplined in improvement. I have never believed money should be treated as a scoreboard for ego. Money is a tool for optionality. It gives you the ability to think clearly. It gives you the ability to leave bad arrangements. It gives you the ability to wait. And waiting well is one of the great hidden advantages in life. That is why the rebuild matters. Not so you can look rich, so you can become hard to corner, so you can become a person whose future is not dictated by every bill, every panic, every rate increase, every repair, every bad month. That is a much better target than appearance. So no, zero is not the end. Zero is the place where the machine stops moving against you and finally becomes available to build in your favor. That is the real just powerful. And for a person who has spent years suffocating under backward compounding, that beginning can feel like air. Once you feel that air, protect it. Then build from there with so much discipline that one day the life that used to feel impossible starts looking inevitable. That is how you come back. Not all at once, but for real.